And let's just begin. Okay, sorry. Cool. First of all, how you're doing, guys? You can put it in the chat. Do you have like a good day or a bad day or a semi good day? Or from a 1 to 10, how much? How well is your day? How good it is? Is it really bad? Is it really good? It's an 8. Okay, an 8 is good. I think that's above average, I would say. Others? Deepa and Tosin, 7. Okay, that's also. I would say that yeah, 7 is like okay, like an average-ish number. Yeah. All right. So first, before we can talk about basically just the interviewing tactics and how we are generally want to interview, first it's important to understand that whatever we are doing, we have to get here. I know it sounds obvious, but before we can get here, it requires us to have a good, first of all, solid UX UI design skills and mainly UI design skills, because when you are a junior, this is what mainly people are going to expect you to do. This is UX UI design. Of course, UX is also important, so I would say like equally important, but most recruiters who are not necessarily designers going to expect you to have UI design skills in the first place. So you have to make sure before you are applying for jobs, you have solid UX UI design skills, you understand what the hell you are doing. Okay, that's quite important. Not only that, but you should have a solid portfolio with 3 pieces of work / project. Okay, it's important. Usually, if you have like at least 3 projects in your case study, that should be enough. If you don't have 3 projects in your case study, that's not enough. Okay, and it's also important that you have your best projects in your case study, in your portfolio. Okay, and also a solid LinkedIn and CV. So just remember, these things which I just listed here are, I would consider, the foundation of being able to get to an interview. Okay, so now we are just like talking about how you are getting to the interview. This is how you are getting to the interview. That you are having solid skills, that you are having solid portfolio skills and solid LinkedIn and CV, which has been put together very well. If you are questioning or if you're asking like, oh my God, how should I do all of those things? Don't fear a moment at all, because we have a classroom here. So if you come here to the school group where you are right now, or where you come here, you come to the classroom in the top, and you have the GitHub UX UI basics, where basically I'm talking through all of this. Okay, so you just have to go through the videos if ever you are getting confused. All right, of how to create good UI designs, solid portfolio, and the CV and the LinkedIn. Okay, these are the foundations. So what are the 4 ways of how you can apply? Okay, we are still just talking about like the interview, how you are going to get to the interview. So first of all, this is the number 1, and I think like the most commonly known way of applying for a job, which is direct application. This is usually done by job board sites like LinkedIn, Glassdoor, whatever site you are using. There is a ton of them, but generally speaking, this is the most difficult to do, because this is the area where you're going to find the most people doing the same thing, because just generally speaking, this is the easiest, right? You just have to push a few buttons. So if you're playing this game of direct application, which actually I had a lot of success with, so I'm not saying that it's impossible, still to this day, I'm getting so much of my work. I mean, to be honest, like almost all of my work, jobs, projects, freelance projects, everything has come from LinkedIn. And I'm not even posting on LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, people don't even know that I have a social following and I'm making content for designers. Nothing. I'm just being active on LinkedIn, talking to people, applying for jobs, and that's it. So it's possible to get a job by direct applications, although I would say this is the most time consuming. So what other options do we have? We can network offline. I'm sure if you ever watched any videos or tutorials of like, okay, how to find a job, many of the people would say that networking is important, and I would agree. So if you're going to a networking event, usually it's done by a close city, and you don't have to handle it like a networking event. You would rather just have the mindset of just like going there, get to know people, tell people what you are doing, and hopefully there will be someone who might be looking for a UX UI designer. You would never know. That would be networking offline, right? You're going there in person. Right, I'm just going to change it in person. But you can also network online. How does that look like? Actually, if you go to LinkedIn and you are typing a few things, like for example, you are looking for work in Germany, specifically in Berlin, you would type in Berlin IT acquisition manager or something like this, or HR recruitment Berlin, something like this, or UX UI design or design department recruitment or something like this along the lines. Also, if you're getting confused of what am I talking about, you can still find this content here, how to apply for companies. I'm talking through all of this more in detail. But basically, what you want to do, you want to find people who are recruiters in that area where you're looking for jobs, and you're just going to talk to them. And what you're going to tell them, you're going to send them, well, this is called a cold message, when you are messaging people that, hey, I'm freshly done UX UI designer, I finished in these schools, here are my projects. If you have any open opportunity, I would be glad to take the chance. This is my specialties, something along the line of this. It's just like, here it is, here I am, this is what I do, this is why I'm really good, this is what I've been doing, this is how I could help your business, something like this. It's still, I would consider, quite difficult. I mean, to be honest, nowadays it's quite difficult to get a job anyways. But like still, sending out cold emails, or not cold emails, cold messages on LinkedIn, I would say it's also time consuming. With that said, I had a few projects with this method. And again, I'm not posting on LinkedIn. I'm not like an influencer on LinkedIn. No one knows that I have like a social following. So this is not affecting that part. And then getting referrals. I think so many people don't even leverage that way of finding a job, because they just think that, these are the only ways. And, I don't have people who are working for these companies. How would I get a referral? So the answer is that there are actually referral websites. If you go there and you're typing in your information and your specialty and everything, there will be people who are going to refer you to a company, because they're going to get some money after you've been referred to this company. Okay. So what you can do, go to Google, referral companies, etc., or referral sources, and then you can get referred through an inside employee. And usually if you're getting referred, I would say this is like the easiest or like the most fastest way of getting an interview, because if you are getting referred, basically you are jumping to the beginning of the queue. So there are the pile of like people applying on the website or LinkedIn. They are usually at below, like the end of the pile. But if you're getting referred, you're going to be on top of the pile, right? So these are the ways of applying. And now I don't think we're going to go really deep down into this one. Just again, you can find the resources in the school group. Also, in terms of like what websites to use, I collected like literally all of the websites which I ever found useful, where I can apply. And you can find it in the resources as well. Okay. And now let's say you eventually landed an interview and you really want to succeed. You really want to get that job. But at the same time, you're really nervous because you didn't have so much interviews. So you don't know what to do. So that's why you are sitting here really late in the evening. And that's why you're listening to me, because you would like to know the answer. So let's dive in. There are 4 or sometimes 5 stages on the interview. And when I say stages, it literally means that there will be multiple rounds of interview which you have to go through. And these can be sometimes even more or less. Depends on the company, the structure, how much effort they put in the recruitment process. But I would say that the first one is always going to be a screening call. Usually it's going to be just a call either on the phone or maybe during a Zoom call. This is usually like 20 to 30 minutes, where the logistics is going to be discussed. It's going to be discussed that what is your location? Are you available to work? Are you okay with like going to the office or working fully remotely? What are your skills, experiences? Is it matching with what they are looking for? They're probably going to ask a lot of other like basic things. They're going to check if your English is good enough, if you are from a foreign country. They're also going to ask your salary expectations. This is really important, which they want to know. So basically, this is going to be just a call with like not even soft skills, just like logistics of like, okay, like Are you ticking all of the boxes which they are looking for in one candidate? If this is done and you are meeting all the basic criteria for the position, there will be coming a design interview where more or less your hard design skills will be asked. So usually at this stage, you don't have to really show your skills, but you have to be able to articulate your skills and just like the reason of like why you are a good designer in general. This is going to be a normal like one-on-one interview or maybe one-to-many interview. Sometimes there are like multiple people from the company listening to you during the interview to assess if you're a good candidate. And they're going to ask a lot about your experiences and situational questions of like, okay, how would you handle this situation? Have you ever worked with developers? What was your biggest challenge during your career? If you're getting a negative feedback, how do you handle that? Are you comfortable with working in whatever industry, etc., etc.? These are going to be things which are more related to your actual design experience. At some companies, at this point, you might have to do a presentation. So here I was putting it to third place, but in some interviews, just randomly, they're going to ask you like, okay, can you show us one of your work, which is really, really random. In most cases, you cannot be prepared for that. That's why it's really good that you're listening to me, because having a presentation, like an actual presentation, which you can pull out anytime is essential. This is, I would say, like why I'm having like really good success rate with interviews, because I have like a pre-made presentation, which is one of my previous work, which I have like a literally slide made in Figma, which I can just pull out and present my work. I know what to say, I know how to say it, I said it many times, I presented it many times in many scenarios, I was iterating on it. It's like a really quick 20 minutes presentation. And after this, there are the usual question, which I already know like what things they're going to ask. Because I've done it a few times already, many times. Okay, so the presentation might going to happen in the second round. Maybe there will be a separated interview for only your presentation. Depends on the company. And in some cases, at this point, after you had like 2 or 3 interviews, maybe you're going to get the job. It depends on the company again. If they are taking it more seriously of like choosing the candidate, they might going to send you a design challenge, okay? Some people or designers, or in cases it's called a whiteboard challenge as well, or a take-home assignment. All of them are working, okay? So take-home assignment, or whiteboard. Okay, this is going to be an actual task which either you have to complete on the fly during the interview, which is really, really stressful. Usually you are prepared for that. So usually they are sending you the information in advance that you're going to need to do one of these challenges. Or they're going to send you like a short project which you have to complete in your free time and then send it back and then present it for them. And by the way, just like giving you a reality check, at this point, you would spend around like at least 3 to 4 weeks just interviewing, right? Which sounds really, really bad because, you know, at this point, you still don't know for sure if you're getting the job, by the way. And then you already spend like a lot of weeks with them. And usually the final stage, after you were presenting your work or presented them like a design challenge on the fly, usually this will be followed by a team fit last meeting, but they're going to see like, are you a type of person who is fitting in their company culture, who is fitting in the team where they are looking for the person? And usually here just is going to be a casual call, rehearsing everything which has been said in the past few weeks, and then they might going to give you an offer at this point. So I know this is a lot of things. Today I'm going to try to explain all of them more in like detail. Okay, so this was like a high-level overview, but this is generally what you can expect. Just first, understanding, are you logistically available for this role? Secondly, do you have the skills for this role? Thirdly, after you were talking, you actually have to show you're working, and then you have to showing how you're thinking, how you're solving problems, how you're working with might be a team. And then they also, everything else from everyone else from the company may going to check you. Usually here is the CEO or the project manager or like team lead who haven't been present so far. Okay. And in general, this can like switch up. So I had many instances as well, but I only had like one interview and then I got the job. Sometimes I get like only 2 rounds of interview and I get the job. Sometimes I had this full 5 rounds of interview and I didn't get the job. It happened also multiple times. I got rejected in the final rounds after like a few weeks of interviewing and I like actually expecting to get the job. But no, I was rejected. So this is like, whenever you see this list, you know, take it with a grain of salt because it can be changed. It can be really fast, like literally, like I swear I had cases when I got the job immediately after just a quick talk and the presentation. Sometimes I didn't get the job after 5 interview rounds, so it depends. But usually this is what you can expect. So generally, how we want to prepare for the interview. First of all, you have to have these answers in advance, in order. The reason why more experienced designers get hired with a higher likelihood, because they have been in this kind of interview situations and they had been answering these questions many, many times more than you did. But you can hack this way by literally writing out these questions and literally crafting your answer and practicing those answers. This is what I was doing back then. And even without experience, you can make a really, really good first expression if you more or less you know what to say, more or less you know what they're going to ask, and more or less you know what to say. Obviously, there will be cases when you cannot answer, unfortunately. But in most cases, if you are preparing well, if you know the company, if you know who is going to interview you, if you know these common questions, which, by the way, you can also find these common questions here. If you come back to the resources, we have design questions where you're going to find the most likely to be asked questions here, okay? And you want to actually like write your answer and you want to practice it. Before you would jump to an interview, you also want to repeat the design theory, going through your design methods, and just be up to date in your design skills. As I said, researching the company is really important. There are a lot of companies who have like specific values, specific ways of thinking about things, talking about things. It's important that you know that what industry the company is in, what is their main service or product, and what maybe you're going to work on. If you want to really step up your interviewing skills, you can actually record yourself, which I can tell you for a fact that it's going to be really, really awkward. Like literally just talking to the camera, especially by yourself, is really, really awkward. But it's still better to be awkward and cringe by yourself at home than being cringe and awkward during the interviews, okay? And practice it over and over. You can also watch back the video. You can also listen to like, okay, how do you speak? How do you answer questions? What are the parts where you are stuttering, or what are the parts where you are not being confident enough in your answers? Those are the situations where you need to go back and think a little bit more about your answers. It's like, for example, me, like I was recording myself a lot when I was doing these courses, these videos, and there were subjects and topics which I didn't know much about. And I always felt like that, you know, my voice is getting weaker. I'm not being that confident about talking about certain subjects. So then I was going back and reviewing like, okay, like why am I not being confident in that topic or that subject? And I was learning a little bit more about it. So then I'm going to be more prepared. And this is also the same thing which you can do. And this way you can sort of like analyze and see like what are your weaknesses or what are your missing pieces. This way you're going to understand like what still you want to learn more about. Just a few quick examples of like what type of questions you can expect during an interview. Tell me about yourself. Why did you leave your previous company? What are you looking for in your next position? Tell me about your design process. Who do you involve in the research and why? Have you ever worked with a design system? What motivates you? What part of your process are you strongest or weakest at? I would say these are really, really standard questions, and you're really, really, really like 80–90% likely that you're going to be asked these questions, and you have to have a good answer for them, okay? But you can prepare this, okay? So you can literally just create a Google Doc or like a Word documentation, and then you can just write your answers down, practice it over and over, even in your mirror. Maybe you can ask your friends, hey, can you ask me this question? So you would like literally tell them back. It's like in school. You can record yourself if you don't want to talk to anyone. And this way you're going to have like a much better shot at answering these questions, because like at every interview there will be the same questions, which is weird. But I think it makes our life easier this way, because you know what to answer. Usually these questions are falling into different types. There are like background questions, personality, technical questions, situational questions. I would say just prepare for them, okay? I don't think that's that important of like what type is the question is. The point is that they want to know about your personality, hard and soft design skills, and just how you're behaving and working in general. That will be the situational questions. What if you don't know the answer? That's more than likely it's going to happen. First of all, prepare for that as well. Like even me, if I do an interview, there will be cases when I don't know the answer, which is unlucky. But it's okay. No one knows everything, and no one expects you to know everything. That's perfectly fine. First of all, I recommend being honest. It's never really a good idea to like, first of all, lie, or maybe just, you know, bend reality, or like act if you would know the answer. Because if it turns out that you actually don't know the answer, it's going to look really bad on you. So you can just admit that you don't know the answer. Maybe you can actually say it out loud that I haven't been in this kind of situation. But if it's really important, I'm going to do some more studying or more research about it and come back with the answer next time, something like this. Or maybe you can ask for clarification if you think that, you know, you kind of understand it, but not really. You can ask for clarification. Or maybe you can just combine it with your previous experiences. For example, they would ask like, what was your biggest challenge in your design career? But perhaps you haven't had a design career because you haven't had the real work. This is the case for most people. That is okay. You would say something like, I haven't been in a real life situation like this one, but based on my previous experiences in my university or in my course or in my internship, I was doing this when this happened. And sort of you would wanna kind of like, you know, reposition this answer. So you wouldn't answer directly to the question, but you would bring in your own life situation and try to answer your best based on your previous experiences. And there is a part which we are calling asking part. This is something which no one really talks about, but I might argue that this is like, I don't know, 50% of the interview of making a good first impression. Because now, so far, we were only talking about like, okay, here are these questions. How am I going to make a good first impression so they think that I know my shit? This would be the goal of these questions and answers. But you also want to showcase yourself as a high-value designer. You also want to show that you are not so desperate to get this job. And you can do that by asking back. Usually at the end of the call, there will be like, let's say 5 to 10 minutes. Then they're going to ask that when they already revealed everything about you, which they was curious about. And this way you can ask something back. So you would want to know more about the company, maybe more about the team, more about the project. And you don't necessarily have to be like actually curious about that, but just like the fact that you're asking back and you're actually being curious about the company and the projects, you're going to show yourself as more like a valuable designer. And your question is also going to put you in a better light, because they're going to think that, oh my God, this person is like an action taker. This person is like, you know, you're leading the conversation. That's why it's really important to ask questions during the interviews as well, because with questions, you are also leading the conversation. And if you're showing that you're able to lead, that's a really good trait during interviews. So I would also urge you to, like, after you were figuring out your questions and answers and you were like practicing them, also just craft a few really basic questions like, okay, what is the company value? What is the main product or service that you guys are working on? How big the team is going to be? What expectation exactly do you have for the future designer who are going to be hired for this position? What happened with the previous designer? Why do you need a new person? So just generally like being like genuinely curious about like what's going on with this position and with this company. This way you can convey value, and this way you can seem like a stronger candidate than other people. Because I can assure you, no one is really doing that. I can tell you that for a fact. So let's say you manage to get through the screening and the interview, which would be the first two stages, right? And now it comes to the presentation. Again, just coming back to this point of like what comes after another, this can be switched up. And sometimes even like after a few questions, you're going to be asked to present your work. So that's why it's really important to like, before every interview, you would open up your Figma and you would set the presentation, even if you wasn't required to present. You want to have your presentation in your back pocket. Like anytime if they ask it, you would just share the screen immediately and you can start presenting. And trust me, like if you don't have the presentation ready and they would ask you to present something, it's going to look really bad when you don't have Figma open. So you're going to open Figma, which is going to slow down your computer. Your connection and the video call going to start lagging. Your voice going to start lagging. Then you don't know what's happening. They don't know what's happening. Then you, in your urge, you would start looking for a work. You would want to find your work, but you don't find your work because you haven't opened it a while ago, and you don't even have a presentation. You don't know what you're going to say. So you're just going to open up like a random Figma file, and then you're going to like go through like this, which is really not an organized way of showing your work. Okay. So just to like summarize everything. Creating a presentation is important. Having your presentation is important before every interview. And this can be a really powerful tool because a lot of people, I might would argue that no people would do that, because most people, when they to be asked to present any of their work, they're usually going to bring up either their portfolio and the case study from their website, or maybe just jump into Figma and show one of their work, which is, I would say, it's okay. Right? It's not the worst thing ever. I've done that multiple times, but after a while I realized like having an actual curated presentation is just like so much easier to use, is so much more convincing, because this is something which you can practice over and over. This way you can make sure that once you actually have to present it and walk through people of your project, you're going to be able to make a really good first impression, because you know exactly what to tell, you know exactly how to tell it. You can practice it like a story which you are telling over and over. Okay. Just generally about like structuring your presentation, my recommendation would be to go back to one of your projects which you are proud of, which you can talk a lot about, where you were actually going through the design thinking process, right? One of the goals of your presentation that you want to show that you are capable of going through the design thinking process, which is going to be compiled with the research, understanding the research, iterating on the research, creating solutions, and then delivering a solution. Give me a second here. Which is going to be the double alignment process. I keep referring back to the double alignment process. This is the process which you have to follow as a designer. Okay, discover, define, develop, and deliver. You're going to find the problem, understand the problem, brief the problem, select the ideas, solutions, and then create the solution. Okay, this one as well. There is a lot of double diamond graphs all over the internet. But basically, here's the problem. You want to understand the problem. You want to find the solution for the problem, and then you want to create the solution for the problem. I'm talking a lot about in the school group as well. But in general, that is the goal of your presentation, of showcasing that you are able to go through all of these stages. And possibly you want to show a work of yours where you actually went through all of these stages. So if ever they would ask you like, okay, what research methods you were using, why did you use this brainstorm method? How often do you do research? I don't know, whatever about research. It's important that you can actually answer those questions. In terms of the structure, I would say like, usually at this point, when it comes to like creating your presentation, you already have your case study work, right? So what I would recommend to do is just go back to your existing case studies, select one of your case studies, and then create a slide deck presentation from your case studies. It's important that in this presentation, you're not going to have overwhelmingly amount of text everywhere, how you would have it in your case study. Because just imagine the difference between the case study and your presentation, not the content, because the content and the project is going to be the same. The story which you're telling is going to be exactly the same, but the way how you're telling that story is going to be different. Because in your case study online, right, there can be only text, and you can only tell your story throughout text. That's the only way, because they're going to jump to your website, they're going to read it, and by reading and watching at the images, they're going to understand how you're thinking and designing. But during a presentation, you don't have to rely on big chunk of text like I do here, for example. You would rather do it by only like images and moments from the design and maybe a few graphs, but like really easy and quick. It's just like a note or like a PowerPoint presentation where you're not having big chunk of explanations, but rather leading with visuals mainly. But on a fundamental level, is exactly going to be the same thing as your project which you would have in your case study. So after you successfully did the screening, okay, they know that you are at the good location, they know that you're capable of working, they somewhat estimated your skills of like, okay, are you a good enough designer? You show them that you're actually a good enough designer, you have a project which you are presenting them. At this point, they're going to send you out a design challenge. Okay, this is the point where you have to be the best. I mean, so far you have to be really good as well. You have to present always your best. But at this point, you actually have to do something in Figma, and then you actually have to prove that you know what you were talking about. It's not just like talking and showing anymore, it's like actually doing, okay? This is the design challenge part. We also have to understand that it costs a lot of money for companies to hire and keep an employee, and it costs for them even more to fire someone. So they want to make sure that they hire the right person by introducing an extra step to the hiring process. The reason why they are having so many steps of hiring one person, because they just want to make sure that they are hiring the right person, because usually it takes a lot of money for companies to hire someone and also a lot of money to fire someone if they hire them. So they just want to make sure that, you know, who they are hiring is actually want to work with them, and it's actually like a trustworthy person who they can work with. So let's just see what are the different kind of design challenges which you might going to meet with. As I said already briefly, we either going to have a whiteboard challenge, maybe an app critique session, or a take-home assignment. I'm going to go in like high-level detail of like what each of them are doing and how you can solve them. So let's dive in. This is what Albert Einstein said, by the way, about like solving problems. If I had an hour to solve one problem, I would spend 55 minutes of thinking about the problem and only 5 minutes thinking about the solution. Although me, myself, I wouldn't distribute my time in that way, but this is a really good and really well representation of how we want to solve problems in general. And not only how you want to solve it, but how you want to showcase that you are solving these problems. Because the last thing which companies and designers want to see from someone who they're about to hire. So let's say I'm a senior designer at one company and I'm looking to hire someone new for my company or for our company. If you are jumping immediately to the solution in your work, whatever method is being presented to you, if it's a whiteboard challenge, a take-home assignment, an app critique, you never want to jump immediately to the solution. This is one of the worst things which you can do to yourself in design. And it's not only for interviews, it's just a general design principle, I would say, that never jump to the solution, never think in solutions. You always, at the beginning of your project, you always just want to be like a detective. You just want to discover, you want to be curious, you want to understand the problem. And once you understood the problem and sort of like mapped out of like, okay, what is the problem? Now I understand it. Then you're going to think about solution like, okay, here is the problem, how I'm about to solve this problem, right? That's why we have on the right side, this is the problem section, and here is the solution section. When we are in the problem section, like I would say the problem area, the problem part of the process, we're never going to think about solutions because this is going to hurt you a lot. if you are thinking in solutions immediately, you're going to show that you are not capable of doing the research, you're not capable of understanding the problem, which is a really, really big red flag when we are hiring designers, okay? So again, it's not only for interviewing, just in general, whenever you want to do a project, you want to spend a good amount of time on researching and understanding the problem. And this is also which you want to showcase in your work when you get a take-home assignment or maybe a whiteboard challenge. So let's just see what a whiteboard challenge is. This is going to be usually on the spot. So usually you're going to know that you're going to have to solve a challenge on the fly. This might going to be done with other designers from the team. If you are being in the office, you're probably going to do it with an actual whiteboard. So that is why it's called a whiteboard challenge. And in this stage, you are not expected to like go to until like design, like an actual design. On the board, you just have to kind of like showcase how you are thinking, what is your thinking process, what are the different steps which you would take. And maybe at the end you wanna land to like an early stage wireframe or like at least a few screens, which hopefully going to solve a specific problem. But again, even if you get a whiteboard challenge, you wanna spend at least half of your time on understanding the problem. And after you understand the problem, you wanna brief again your project, and then you wanna give a solution for your problem, okay? And yeah, I had one of these kind of whiteboard challenge. It was online. That was my first whiteboard challenge. I wasn't really prepared for that at the time. And what I was doing, first of all, I started to panic because there was not so much time. I had like 30 minutes to solve the problem. There was 2 high-level stakeholders on the call from the design team, and they were literally watching what I was doing in Figma. They was not talking, their web cameras wasn't on, they were just like viewing literally like what am I doing in my Figma file. And this was like a really, really awkward and weird situation for me at the time. But this is like the reality. And the reason, like later they told me the reason why they didn't hire me, because they told me that I wasn't spending enough time on understanding the problem. Rather, I was jumping almost immediately for the solution. And they told me specifically that that was the reason why they didn't choose me, because I wasn't thinking it through. I was starting to panic. They seen me in the webcam that I was kind of like panicking. And they told me that I wasn't putting enough emphasis on the problem itself. And you know, for example, for this company, this was like a huge worldwide known telecommunication company. This was the last round, and I spent already weeks talking with them back to back. So this was especially painful because I really wanted to work for that company at the time, right? So just for your sake, if you ever get into this situation, don't jump immediately to the solution, but rather first ask a lot of questions. Even if they tell you that you cannot ask that many questions, usually they're never going to tell you that though. But you want to ask a lot of questions, understand the problem well, and then you can move to like the solution phase, okay? This is what designers do. This is why we are getting paid, okay? The reason why we are having jobs and we are having this industry, because we are not jumping to solutions. This is what bad designers would do. But before, we are doing research, and based on the research, we're going to make data-driven decisions. That is the goal. So this was the whiteboard challenge, okay? What else do we have? We might going to have an app critique session. I'm going to be honest, I never really had this session. I only see it like other people were doing it online. I think I had like a similar stuff when they were asking me to like critique their website or their product. I don't know if it can be called like an app critique session. But basically what you want to do is like, they're usually going to be curious about like how you would improve their application. What are the things? Maybe there will be some obvious situations where they're going to, you know, where it's going to be really, really obvious that like UX or UI wise something is wrong with that, and they just want to know that if you're noticing those. I think it's like, I would consider this one the easier versions of like showing your skills, because here you don't have to create anything, but still you want to showcase your working way and your thinking way of how you are solving and researching. And this is the most common one, take-home assignments, when you actually have to design an application in 2 to 3 days, sometimes 5 days, depends on the complexity of the project. And this one is the most time-consuming, I think. This is the worst, because even if you spend a week on it, it's still not guaranteed that you're going to get the job. But the same way of solving a take-home assignment, the same way and method is true here as well, which I said earlier. If I had an hour to solve a problem, I would spend 55 minutes on thinking about the problem and 5 minutes on thinking about the solution, okay? This is exactly the same thing which I would do here. You want to spend a lot of time on understanding the problem. And here, actually, because you are at home by yourself doing this project, you can actually go online, you can do research, you can actually go back to the stakeholders, which might going to be your interviewer. You can send them an email. In most cases, they actually going to encourage you to like jump in a call with them and ask a lot of questions about the project. So this is like literally, this is what they want to see that you are doing. They want to see that you are actually doing research, you are actually asking questions, you actually want to understand the problem. And you are not just like doing random designs, which you think is like, okay, this looks nice, this would work. No, no, no. Even if your solution is good, but you cannot back it up with facts, with data, with research, with reasoning on like why your solution is good, then this solution is not good. Even if it would work out, it's not going to be good. Not because it's like not actually good, but because you cannot back it up. You cannot back up your decisions, okay? This is going to be a huge divider between like okay or good enough designers and like actually like pro designers who are getting jobs after another. That you are, and it doesn't mean that you have to be like a professional in research. You just only have to be willing to spend the time on research, okay? And when I say research, I don't mean like literally be like a data analyst and like send out surveys and like do 15 user interviews and then synthesize all the data and spend all of your time on like analyzing like what the hell you were researching. No, no, no. Just spend your time on the basic things which is required, which is like do a quick competitive analysis, check out what happened on the market, find out the problem, find out a little bit more about the users. If you have the chance, like actually talking to people in your area who is falling into the user or the problem demographic, talk to them, do a user interview. And it doesn't have to be really precise, but if you can showcase that you are willing to do these things and you know how to do these things, you are way, way, way going to be far ahead of everyone else, because these are the things which a lot of people doesn't want to spend time on, does not doing. They're just going to create, like, they're gonna get the design brief, they're going to make a design based on the brief, and then they're just going to send it back. And even if it's like a beautiful looking design, but it's not being backed up by research, it's not likely that it's going to be chosen as like the winner design, okay? So just again, and I know I'm hammering this fact a lot today, but finding the problem, which is going to come by research, is I would say like the most important part of our jobs, right? We are problem solvers by default. Designers, like UX UI designers, are problem solvers. We are not graphic designers or like brand designers or application designers. We are not one of them. We are user experience designers. And user experience, the first part, or I would say where user experience begins, is the research. Researching and understanding the problem, finding the right problem, finding a good problem, and then figuring out solutions for that problem, right? This is what you want to showcase in your interview as well, that you understand this process and you understand why we are doing the research. And even if yourself, you haven't done so much research, or you don't think it's important, you can just tell that you think it's important. You can just tell that what would you do here. Even if you've never done too much research in your life, you can still tell how important it is and why it is important, because this way you're going to show that you understand what design is about. Okay. And more or less, I would say like this is what you can expect in your interviewing stages. More or less, we went through all of these sections. The unfortunate thing is that still, if you spend like weeks going back and forth with them, it's still not 100% that you're going to get hired. But that's why it's good to practice all of these things, because if you're practicing and being prepared well for all of these stages, you're going to have a much better shot and chance of making a good expression, answering the right way, showing your and presenting your work in the right way, and solving those take-home assignments in the right way. So you are more likely to get hired. Okay. And I think that's it. Do you have any questions? I think that's the time to ask it. You can put it in the chat. We can go back to any of these topics if you want to. Or you can ask something totally different, but hopefully at least related to the UX UI design a little bit. Otherwise, if you don't have any questions, that's perfectly fine as well. There is no rush. There is no push. I'm just going to call it a day. I hope you were learning something, at least. By the way, all of this content, I'm going to upload this recording for the group as well. But I'm going through these topics here in the interview stage as well, okay? So you can go through these videos where I'm explaining more or less these same topics, more in detail, okay? Because here I'm not spending so much time on them. Yeah, that would be it. During whiteboard assignments, how do we do the research part? Okay, so obviously there you cannot like actually do a research, but what you can do, that you can ask and discover as much as possible. Usually during a whiteboard challenge, you literally going to be either in like a FigJam file, maybe like this one, okay, and they're literally going to give you like a quick project brief of what you have to do. So if you're getting the project brief, you would be really tempted to solve that problem immediately, but this is what we want to avoid. How do you do research when you are doing a research, or like being in a whiteboard session? It's really likely that there will be the stakeholders, like your interviewers, who are more likely going to be senior designers from the team, because they are like overlooking of like how you're thinking, how you're solving problems. So you can handle your senior designers in the call as like stakeholders. What are stakeholders? Stakeholders are decision makers. Usually they are the one who is founding the whole project and who you have to convince that this project is worth making and worth spending money on, okay? So basically, whatever is going to be your project brief, you want to handle your designers in the call as your stakeholders, as your managers, as your boss, basically. And you want to ask a lot of questions from them, as much as you need in order to like start able to be in designing. And after you have enough information, then you would start like at least collect the information, discover the information, write out the information. And this would be the part which looks something like this. So first you just want to like debrief the project again. What is the problem? Who is the user demographic? What are their main pain points? And then maybe like start understanding like, okay, maybe start thinking about the solutions, features. And still at this point, you can work closely with your interviewers. They are really happy to answer you. But this is what they want to see. They want to see that you are being curious, trying to understand the problem, trying to get as much information about the brief as much possible. And then after you have the information, then you would jump to the solution. That is the important part. Like, doesn't matter what type of challenge you're going to get. It doesn't matter if it's being a whiteboard challenge, an app critique, or a take-home assignment. What you have to see that you always want to spend a good amount of time on understanding the problem, and this not only can be done by like user interviews, but maybe like just asking your friends and family and documenting that you're asking your, like, for example, if you need to design like a tourist application where people can book a quick tour, or like a travel, whatever, you know, more or less, you're going to have people around you who are likely to enjoy traveling or sometimes be traveling. So you can ask them, literally. You don't have to go to Facebook groups and stuff. You have your people around you who may be going to fall into the user demographics, so you can just ask them. Or if you're being in a whiteboard challenge situation, it's possible that your senior designer is going to pretend that they might going to be the user demographic. Okay. Thank you for the question. Any more questions, maybe? Awesome. Maybe any more question which is not related to this one? Okay. If not, thank you for being here. Thank you for spending your time with me. Before you would leave, I just want you to remember that it's nice that we know all of these things, but we want to make sure that you have the fundamentals in order. Okay, so this is really important. These are the things which I talk the most about: how to get better at UI design, how to create a solid portfolio, and how to manage your CV and LinkedIn so you are actually getting invited. Because if these are not in order, that's why I started everything with this one. If these are not in order, then you're not likely to be invited to interviews. No matter how hard you're going to try, you're going to face a lot of rejections. So that's why first you have to be familiar with the basics of UX UI design, have a solid portfolio with 3 pieces of project or work, and then have a solid LinkedIn and CV. And if you have all of these, you are really likely to get invited for interviews, okay? So thank you again for being here. Enjoy the rest of the day or tomorrow. Good luck with everything. If you have any specific question, feel free to ask it in the group or maybe DM me in the group. Thank you again. Take care and see you soon.